an extra 5 minutes, and now it is your opportunity to bring it all together. So what do you do with 15 minutes? Knowing what you can do in 5, 10, having visited with this figure before, we could take 30 seconds to look at it again, analyze it, study it, maybe begin doing some marks, getting a sense. I always start with the shape of the head, the perspective of the head, the size of it, just to give me a sense of size of the full body. So if I get a sense of the head, I know it's going to pretty much fit me right to about here. Having a quick read to what will be the major joints, and pretty much creating the armature with some of the relationships that are going to be crucial for me to figure out. A little bit of the weight of the pose. And there it is right there. Perfect. So getting a sense of that. And how everything lines up with everything. So I'm looking at this knee, which is the one that's bent, being a little bit lower than this knee, which is the one straight, holding all the weight. How it lines up straight up with this shoulder and pretty much all of the front of the torso here. So that is a great clue. Actually begins to develop the feeling of the pose much, much better. Looking at these two also lined up perfectly. And if you're satisfied, you can actually begin your drawing. So any rearrangements I can do here in specific sections, I could do as I work along. Nothing major that I would identify right now. Just looking at the relationship between the elbows, which one's lower, the distance, perfect triangle here. From the head to the elbows and the head, I'm visualizing a triangle, and I'm seeing the angle of the triangle to see if I have the distance between them. And I see that it's very close. So I can begin working. So my next step is going to be, I am going to, as usual, start with the head. Some of the simple lines. And I'm blind drawing, but a little casual line as well here and there. I actually see a little detail that I am going to add now, which is the line for the jaw and the under part of the chin here. That is going to pretty much identify the pose here. It is going to be a major part of it. So it could be considered detail. It isn't. It's just getting those lines in. You can immediately see how the head is tilted. Any extra lines I add there, yeah, that would be considered detail. Not what I'm looking for now. Still going into negative space. Look at that beautiful shape of negative space between the chin and the shoulder here. Slowing down. Getting a good read of those lines. Moving from one side to the other, because I like to do that. Work pretty much on the overall. The whole picture, not one area, and stay there, resolve it all the way through. And then when you pull back, you're like, uh-oh, gotta rework it because you didn't consider. So if you could be working on the whole thing at the same time, that would be ideal. And you could move from one area to the next and develop it in stages. That is more recommended because you'll be able to catch yourself earlier in order to readjust, reassess, rearrange. I have a big urge here to get into this first negative space between the arm, and I'm going to make a big decision here with the thickness of the torso here. So it is not easy. You got to find those clues that point to where exactly that line belongs. That negative space, it doesn't solve all of it. So adding, I'm looking at the shape of the negative space, but I'm also looking at the angle and the relationships. Just to get a better read. And there we go. Yeah. I'm going to show you guys another way, which we also did last week, which is before I begin to get too much into the actual negative space read, I can actually do a quick negative space read that is a little more geometric without the actual nuance. And I could then come back and revisit. So notice how all these lines are absolutely as straight as possible in a way, with minimal characteristics. And it's just, again, to get a sense of volume. Here I enter some negative space. So I want to make sure. But I could always do that where I'm somewhat simplifying the contour and working the whole figure in one pass. So I could then come back slower and rework the contour like we did before with that blind feel, where we're fixated on the subject and we're just working out every single curvature. I get a little bit of, I feel like there's a little more tilt in this one, making this a little bit thinner. And now I'm going to work around and into the body. Again, no detail. Just adding a few lines that would pretty much give it all. Resolves what would be a hand. Now I get into a little bit of blind drawing here. Making more precise decisions. Adding a little bit of that muscle to the line, which is not much, just a couple of variations in the angle and the curvature. And I need to find a good clue that is precise for the negative space that's right in between these two legs. So as I come up here and I read negative space and some of the other relationships, I'm going to come to this point right about here and take care of this negative space. There we have it. Now, I'm getting a sense that I lost track here. So that's why having a little bit of a a kneaded eraser just to pick up some of this graphite. I have to lower this, considering right about here. And what I'm going to do is, as I lower this, I'm going to thicken this side here. So there was a misread here. And now the knee comes. Much better read of that negative space there. Better relationship between the legs. And now this angle really works well. So one of the things we find ourselves, as we did a 15-minute drawing, all of a sudden you find yourself with way more time. You cannot help it. Draw in a different way. I always love these quick, fast, 1 minute, 30 seconds that don't allow you to think too much. And somehow, yeah, you want, if you could remain in that mindset for a longer drawing, that would be ideal. But that's the part where it takes a good amount of focus and discipline to not deviate from that method. And it will. There's no other option but develop your confidence. It happens. The more and more you do it, the better you get at it. The more confident you get at it, the better you get at it. And then you're going to just have to find bigger challenges. That's all. So we are at 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And I find myself at a point where, okay, what else can I do to this? It seems like I should be there. I'm there. Let me just play a little. I guess I could develop a little more of the hand. But I'm just going to give it a little bit of that negative space touch we did earlier. And when you draw your decision to add more and more detail is what makes your style. At some point, the amount of detail that you can come up with, it's so personal. I tend to recommend and favor the less is more. You can say much, much better things with less. But that less needs to be strong and clear. Just like public speaking. And there is a 15-minute mixture of all of it. Construction, triangulation, contour, blind contour, negative space, all of them put together.